President Trump is back at the White House and back to the reality in the United States of gas prices, which are now averaging $4.53 a gallon nationally. If you thought that after a couple of days away during his trip to China, and when asked exactly what he meant when he answered that question, that he was going to rephrase or clarify what he said about Americans' financial situations when it comes to the impact from the Iran war, you would be wrong.
That's right. That's a perfect statement. So, I'd make it again.
But you can imagine how many people stopped the soundbite I don't think about America's financial situation. So what's your response to that framework?
It's very simple. When people hear me say it, everybody agrees. Short-term pain. It's going to be short-term pain. But the pain is much less than people thought.
Trump says he said it, and he'd say it again. And that came after both the Vice President, J.D. Vance, and the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, spent the last couple of days saying things like this.
Do you agree with the president's position that Americans' financial situations should not be a consideration in that decision-making process?
Well, I don't think the president said that. I think that's a misrepresentation of what the president said. But of course, the president and I and the entire team, we care about the American people's financial situations.
I don't know the context in which he made that comment, but I can tell you the president thinks about Americans' financial situations. I talk to him on average twice a day, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, and we talk about it constantly.
The context in the question itself was pretty clear, but also in the subsequent interview that the president did while he was in Beijing with Bret Baier. And in fact, during that interview, the president continued doubling down on this sentiment.
When you tell somebody you're going to have to pay a little more, not that much more, a little more for gasoline for a very short period of time, because we want to stop the threat of being blown to pieces by a lunatic, by a crazy person, and they are crazy, using nuclear weapons, everybody says that's fine. And that question was a fake question, and they didn't put my full answer. I totally care.
Of course, to people struggling to put food on the table or who are grimacing when they go to fill up their tank, there was nothing fake about the question. And as far as the president's answer, we've played the entire thing for you since he said it as he was departing the White House earlier this week. But just for good measure, you can listen to the entire thing for yourself.
Mr. President, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all. That's the only thing that motivates.
My lead source tonight is the New York Times White House correspondent and our CNN political analyst, and also the co-author of the new book, Regime Change, Maggie Haberman. And Maggie, you've covered the president his entire political career. He's typically known for having good political instincts when it comes to voters and their sensitivities. What did you make of him doubling down on that comment tonight?
I think that he is very adamant that he can sell this war that the American government is engaged in right now. And he is telling people that, they should relax and trust him and things should get better. It's not the first time in U.S. history that you have had a president say that, Kaitlan, to the public. However, for past presidents who have done that, it has not ended very well for them politically, number one. Number two, Americans are hurting. Gas prices are just what they are. As you said, the question was what it was. He said what it was. He has seemed far less attuned to voters' concerns lately and has been publicly talking more about himself and about what he perceives as injuries to himself and condemning coverage and insisting that it's not real. What is real is, again, the tape you just played and where gas prices are. Could it change, as he keeps saying that it will, because gas prices are going to go down quickly when the price of oil goes down because this war ends, or whatever it's being called right now ends? It might. I mean, look, it's a long way between now and November, which is generally the context in which the White House is looking at it and his party is looking at it, but it's certainly not where it is today. And so far, this government doesn't have a great record of being especially honest about where things are with the public. Remember, this was supposed to be a 4 to 6 week time frame. Look at where we are now.
You said he seems less attuned to voters' concerns. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a variety of reasons, Kaitlan, but one is he's not on the ballot. Number two, I think that his information ecosystem is much smaller. We've talked about this any number of times. He is hearing from dissenting voices less than he used to. He is getting more of a sort of positive feedback flow to what he wants to hear, depending on what he's reading or seeing or what aides are sharing with him. The press crew that is covering him in the White House has changed, and that is in part by the White House's design. And so I think for all of those reasons, I think that he is feeling like he is going to listen to what he believes. And also he thinks, and people can judge us however they want, he relied on his instincts to win the election in 2024. He did win. He won it decisively. And his party has been in power. However, at a certain point, you can only control what you can control, and gas prices are what they are, and people can feel that. Again, it may change, but this administration has not set a consistent set of goals for what it wants to achieve other than Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That could be very open-ended.
I mean, it's also remarkable that the vice president said, that wasn't exactly what the president said, is being misrepresented. Speaker Mike Johnson saying, I don't know the context of that. And then Trump comes out and says, no, I would repeat that same comment today.
He did say that, but he also insisted that it was a fake question and that they didn't play his full answer. And it wasn't a fake question, and the answer was played. And so he sometimes does say both sides of what could be a problem. But yes, ultimately he doubled down on it. And ultimately, if you are in the Republican Party and you are tethered to Donald Trump in the midterms, you don't really want to hear that quote in an ad, and you're very likely to.
Yeah, in the same interview, the president was asked about what you just referenced, this timeline that he put on this war, 4 to 6 weeks initially. Right. Now, of course, it's in the 11th week. He was asked how long he expects it to last, and this is what he said.
I don't like putting pressure on all of the people. I want to do the job right. If it takes an extra 4 weeks, but think of it. We're in Vietnam for 19 years. I'm here. I'm doing this for 2.5 months.
Do you think it's clear to the president himself how long this war might go on for?
It's hard to discern clarity from what he's been saying publicly, Kaitlan. If he does have clarity behind the scenes, that would be a different story. I don't think generally politicians like to compare their own actions to Vietnam as, we're in a better situation than that generally, because Vietnam was a calamity, and it was a calamity of lost lives and massive distrust in the government, and really hasn't recovered ever since in the U.S. in any meaningful way. So yes, it's true that, this is relatively short in terms of wars that the public has faced, but this is a president who, if you wanted to talk about his immigration policies, Kaitlan, or tariffs, you could say correctly, those are things he ran on. Those are things he said he was going to do. The public had no reason to expect otherwise. He actually has been more hawkish than his team on Iran, but he also has been very critical of overseas military involvement by the U.S., and particularly the history in the Middle East. And so this is just fundamentally different than what he said on the campaign trail. Now, it's not different that he said Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That is true. He has said that for many, many, many decades. But again, that is very open-ended, and what that could look like is a different issue.
Yeah, I mean, because he said Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, but he also said no new wars, and that he would bring Americans' costs down. I mean, and he was asked in the interview about a retired farmer from Pennsylvania who was saying that he's very disappointed about gas prices, how high they are. And the president responded to that concern, saying, we hit the highest stock market price ever. Now it's higher with the war. It's higher than when it was when I went in. I mean, do you think that he sees the difference between stock market highs and people who say, I can't afford to fill my car up right now?
Generally speaking, the stock market had been something of a guiding light for him, as you know, certainly in term one. I think it's a little less now. There are a lot of people who don't have 401ks, as you know, and it is very different than having gas prices. He has had a remarkable ability to say things like that to the public, because the public, generally speaking, Kaitlan, despite his long years in politics at this point, many people have not viewed him as a politician or as a standard politician. They viewed him as a celebrity, or they viewed him as a phenomenon. They viewed him as a movement leader. All of those things have been true. He is a unique figure in our history, and certainly in the history of this country. But he's really testing whether he can continue doing that. So I don't know whether he can see the difference, but right now, more voters than before seem to be able to.
Maggie Haberman, as always, thank you for your excellent reporting.